Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Randana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Randana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Lord Baladev's Glorious Appearance Day Ki Jai. Shri Balarama Ji Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. So, on this third day of August 2020 in SanDiego, we're celebrating Lord Balaram's Glorious Appearance Day. And we're going to chant this little line from the Mundaka Upanishad, which Srila Prabhupada explained several places in relation to Lord Balaram. And I will read from those places after we chant this verse, or this line from a verse. Nayam atma balahine labhyaha. Nayam atma balahine labhyaha. Nayam atma balahine labhyaha. Nayam atma balhine labhya. Nayam atma balhine labhyo. Nayam atma balhine labhyo. Nayam atma balhine labhyo. Nayam atma balhine labhyo. Nayam atma balhinena labhyo. Nayam atma balhinena labhyo. Nayam atma balhinena labhyo. Okay, so there's no formal verse here, but I'll give you the synonyms. Na, not. Ayam, this. Atma, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bala, Lord Balaram. Hinena, without. Labhyaha, attains. So the idea is no one attains realization of Supreme Personality of Godhead without the strength given by Lord Balaram. And Prabhupada explains here in two places. First, from an Appearance Day lecture, Balaram Appearance Day lecture in Bhuvaneshwar in February 2nd, 1977. And he says this about Balaram and about this phrase. Balaram means Guru Tattva. Get the chair. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Balaram means Guru Tattva. Balaram represents Guru. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasada. If we want to understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if we want to understand Krishna, then we must take shelter of Balaram. Nayam atma balahinena labhyo. This balahinena labhya, this Vedic injunction means, quote, without the mercy of Balaram, you cannot understand, you cannot realize your spiritual identification. And here's a little longer passage from the Krishna book, chapter 2, Prayers by the Demigods for Lord Krishna in the Womb. Prabhupada writes, in the Upanishads it is stated, Nayam Atma Balahinena Labhya. The purport is that one cannot attain the supreme platform of self-realization without being sufficiently favored by Balaram. Bala does not mean physical strength. No one can attain spiritual perfection by physical strength. One must have the spiritual strength which is infused by Balaram or Sankarshan. Ananta or Sheshanaga is the source of the power which sustains all the planets in their different positions. Materially, this sustaining power is known as the law of gravitation. But actually, it is the display of the potency of Sankarshan. Balaram or Sankarshan is the source of spiritual power, or the original spiritual master. Therefore, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is also the incarnation of Balaram, is the original spiritual master. And the spiritual master is the representative of Balaram, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who supplies spiritual strength. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is confirmed that the spiritual master is the manifestation of the mercy of Krishna. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakya Chakshu Unminatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parambara. Oh, thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, welcome. Welcome. Okay. So, I thought I would read these passages to emphasize our immediate relationship with Lord Baladev. We know that we have Lord Balaram on the altar here with in the form of the Jagannath deities, Jagannath and Baladev and Subhadra. But sometimes we forget our daily, moment-to-moment reliance on Lord Baladev to practice all of our sadhana in Bhakti Yoga. Where does this strength come from? And it does take strength. This verse is sometimes, it's part of a larger verse, a whole verse in the Mukunda Upanishad, that is basically saying without spiritual strength and without knowledge, without determination, without austerity, one cannot attain this realization of God. But Prabhupada he would generally chant this one line and emphasize the relationship of this Bala to Balaram, that is coming from Balaram, because Balaram is the original guru providing its spiritual strength. And whenever we speak of Balaram, we speak of Lord Nityananda, because more immediately in our practice of devotional service, we are following in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees, his science of bhakti that's been given through Rupa Goswami and other great acharyas, and come down to what's Srila Prabhupada. So that strength, where does that strength come from? It's described by by Lord Chaitanya in his instructions to Rupa Goswami, 19th chapter of Madhya Lila, that by the grace of Guru one gets Krishna, by the grace of Krishna one gets Guru. And what is their mercy that they give is the seed of devotional service. The seed of the creeper of devotional service is planted in the heart. So that is given by the spiritual master as a representative of Krishna, empowered by Krishna. And that seed is in the form of faith, in the form of the holy name, in the form of the instructions, and in the case of Srila Prabhupada, in the name of this, the form of this whole institution that is allowing us to further our devotional service by watering that seed. This is chiefly through hearing and chanting. So where do we get the inspiration to do this? When Prabhupada came to America, and nobody knew anything about Krishna, basically, and for almost a year he tried different places in New York, uptown New York, and he made some headway, of course, but things really didn't take off until he came down to the Lower East Side, and he got some real sincere followers. They had been through so much. It was a drug era. It was the hippies and so many things. But there was sincerity there, and Prabhupada was able to find that fertile ground to plant the seed, planting the seed. That famous second volume of the Lilamrita. So Prabhupada himself was obviously empowered. He was empowered in an amazing way to do what he did, to spread Krishna consciousness first to America, then throughout the whole world, and to provide spiritual strength for all of his disciples, all his followers, to follow the principles, to give up things which were so damaging to one's consciousness, for the four pillars of sin, of course, and to practice Krishna consciousness regularly chanting, and finally, the way the movement took hold, the morning program, so they would have the spiritual strength. They got the spiritual strength from Prabhupada, from their relationship with him, and it's very important to remember the line we sing every morning, Shri Guru Chadana Padma Ese Uttama Gati, that Shri Guru Chadana Rati Ese Uttama Gati, that this attraction, or this love and attraction for the lotus feet of the Guru is the best means of advancement. In other words, it was entirely on Prabhupada's personality and his influence, his charisma, his speaking, his purity, his spiritual strength that he himself had, that devotees relied on to take up this, this process, which was unknown to the West. It was amazing, this chanting of the mantra, how much it transformed you and so forth. But the strength to do that was coming from Srila Prabhupada, who was representing the original guru of Balarama and transmitting that strength, that bala, that spiritual strength. And it's a daily experience that we have. Whatever we're doing in Krishna consciousness seriously, and following the regulations that have been given by Rupa Goswami through his NOD, it's all on the basis of this spiritual strength imparted through the whole parampara, and especially through our spiritual master, and who represents Balaram. So now we're of course observing his appearance day and honoring him, and it's important to remember that relationship we have with him on a moment-to-moment basis in our spiritual life. Now, there's another relationship we have, and that is because he is the expansion of Krishna, who then further expands, and this whole creation has come about by Mahavishnu, Karanadakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Chiradakshay Vishnu. When you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll find several descriptions of this, of how Krishna, we know that Krishna is the cause of all causes. Right? We know that from the first verse of the Brahma Samhita. So how does that actually work? Well, it's not that he's got a big computer up there and he's figuring out all the little things that are happening in this creation and making it happen just on time, No, he expands. In other words, he himself is not directly involved with the doings of this material world, but he expands himself as Baladev, who then further expands himself as the Purusha avatars. We have Mahavishnu picture there, and lying in the causal ocean, emanating all of these universes, and then further expanding in each universe as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, appearing on the lotus grown from his navel as Brahma, who will then, he was a jiva almost all the time, very exalted jiva, who then engineers the different elements of the material universe. And then Kshirodaksha Vishnu is within every atom, within every heart. All of those are expansions of Baladev. Through the Chaturvyuha, the Sankarshan, you can read about it in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Balarama is very much with us in that sense also, sustaining the whole material world that we're occupying. We take for granted, but there's intelligence in every atom of it, the way it's working. And that intelligence is ultimately the intelligence of Krishna. They're empowering the demigods, inspiring them to do what they do in order for the whole thing to go on. So Balaram, this is nicely explained, by the way, in great detail in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Because when in the glorification of Lord Nityananda, at the beginning of the book, there is a Mangalacharan. And there are, I think, 5 verses about Lord Chaitanya, and then 4 or 5 verses about Nityananda, describing what I just did, about how he is original Baladev, is not different from Baladev, and all of this. And then when we get to the 5th chapter of the Adi Leela, there's long purports describing this process of creation, if you're interested. And we should be. So this is the day in which we especially glorify and remember him, and we should remember this aspect of him as well. This is kind of the official aspect. This is the tattva of Balaram. But we also want to remember the Leela, because that's so sweet. When you read the Krishna book, Balaram, of course, he precedes Krishna. Now, I'm not 100% sure. Is he like 9 days older than Krishna, or is he a year or 9 days? I think he's just 9 days older, isn't he? Or is he 8? Is it 8 days? Okay. Because we have the 3rd, and Janmashtami is on the 12th, but all right. So how does that work? The whole thing develops in the dungeon of Kamsa. The whole story that when Devaki's marriage was just taking place, there was this oracle announcing that the 8th child of this lady of who you're driving is going to kill you. So Kamsa, being a demon, he thought, well, the immediate solution is to just kill my sister. Actually cousin sister, but sister. And Vasudeva, by his skillful speaking, and eventually promising he would deliver all the children, Kamsa relented, only on the basis that it would look bad. This was Vasudeva's argument. Well, how will it look? Your reputation will be ruined, basically, if you kill your sister on a wedding day. So yeah, you're right, I'll just kill the son, I'll kill all the children, Anyway, the story, it goes on like that. And then when it comes time for the first 6 children, are actually delivered, he delivers to 6 sons, to Kamsa. And at first he, like man, said, oh, you don't have to worry about this son, the first son, I'll give him back to you. But Vasudeva said, yeah, you can't trust him, he's a demon, And sure enough, was it Narada who came? Yeah, Narada came and says, well, all the demigods have taken birth and in the Yadu dynasty and in Nanda Gopal and Gokula, and any of them, could be, Krishna. Says, oh, you're right, thanks for the info. So then he gets, he imprisons him, takes the child, kills the child, gruesome, Turns out they're his own sons from a previous life, that's another thing. But, so anyway, 6 sons are killed. Now the 7th son is Balaram, you see. And Balaram he's drawn to the womb of Rohini, who's another son of Vasudeva, another wife of Vasudeva, who's taking shelter in Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj. So that's drawing, that's sankarshan, completely drawn. That's one meaning of karshan. It's karshati, Krishna. It all means to pull. So he's pulled to that womb, and everyone thinks, oh, Devaki had a miscarriage, and then from the mind of Vasudeva into the mind or the heart of Devaki, the 8th son Krishna is transferred. It's not an ordinary impregnation. And so when this 8th child is born, Vasudeva breaks his promise. He breaks his promise. He was trusted by Kamsa because he always kept his promise. But this one he said, I can't deliver this son. And so by Yogamaya's influence, their shackles are open, all the guards are put to sleep, and he was able to take him to Gokula, where Nanda Maharaj was, and exchange him for, this is all planned ahead, he was told Yogamaya, that you'll be transferred and you'll be brought back, And Kamsa, he thought, well, just see. He's thinking it has to be a son, although the word, I looked it up, it's actually child that the omen said. But he says, this is the 8th child, so I have to kill him. But she flew into the sky and she said, you fool, the child who will kill you is born somewhere else. And then comes this whole effort to kill all the children, and the demons come. But in the meanwhile, Balaram is now also safely in Vrindavan, and with Rohini. And she's taking shelter of Nanda also, because like many of the queens, they took shelter there. So he's growing up a little bit older than Krishna. And so there's so many wonderful pastimes. How Balaram, being a little older, as he gets older, he takes a role of protector of Krishna. There's a Sakya Ras going on there, the friends of brothers, but there's different kinds of Sakya Ras, and his is tinged with like a little parental Ras protection, So, but then it's pretty obvious as time goes on that Krishna doesn't need too much protection. He's killing all these demons one by one. But so I wanted to read a couple of my favorite pastimes here. Balaram, of course, stays with Krishna, and he accompanies him to Dwarka. Various things happen there, but one of the things is that at a certain point, I picked out a couple of pastimes. Give me a second here. Oh, that's not it. Oh, yes. So there's this, incredible separation when Krishna leaves, when he's taken by Akrura from Vrindavan to Mathura to wrestle Kamsa. Kamsa thinks he's going to kill him, but he's actually killed. So there's this, terrible separation that the gopis are distraught, and but he goes there, and Balarama accompanies him. And then when Kamsa is killed, then there's all these other demons that are coming. Jarasan is trying to kill because he was very angry because his 2 daughters were married to Kamsa and they had to come home, and now he's got to support them. So he was very upset. so he attacks 18 times. And it's a great scene where this is where Krishna, when he never kills any demon in the Vrindavan with weapons because he's a Vaishya. He throws him into the, Dhenukara, Tassa and company, he's throwing into the trees, and Putana sucks out the breast milk, and Agasura, who is it? Keshi. Yeah. Well, Keshi, the horse, he puts his mouth, hand in there and strangles him. And Agasura, he enters in and then expands, and there's all of this. So when he goes to Mathura, then it's clear that he's the son of a Kshatriya. So he doesn't immediately, do any weapons. And the first one he kills is that cloth merchant. Remember that? He gives him a karate chop, chops off his head with his hand, and then they take the clothes. But now is a different dress. Now he's dressed more as in town. He's transforming. Then there's Kuvalyapida, and a big elephant. And then Kamsa thought, well, the elephant will take care of him, So eventually he kills that elephant. He rips out his tusk, and he kills the elephant driver and the elephant, And he walks into the arena. And some of the soldiers would come. He breaks the bow, huge cracking sound. And Kamsa hears it, and he's scared, oh my God, he's here, my death is here. And there's guards who come, and they wipe out he and Balaram. Balaram has the other tusk. And they wipe them out, but still no actual weapons. So then, when he finally is over, he kills Kamsa with his hands, right, with blows, and very dramatic. And so he's settled in there, and then Jarasan starts his thing, And he surrounds Mathura with all these Akshahinis, the soldiers and the cavalry and the elephants, thousands and thousands. And so naturally the residents of Mathura are a little apprehensive what's going to happen. So Krishna leaves the city with a little squad, maybe 10 or 12 soldiers, and Balaram, Still doesn't have his weapons. He summons this chariot down from the sky. I think there's two, one for Balaram. And fully, equipped with weapons and flags and everything. And so now they're ready to do battle. And all the residents are on the parapets there looking at one. And Krishna, they go inside and they're just overwhelmed. It's like surrounded by this big ocean of what's going to happen. They're all afraid. So then he starts shooting arrows, and it's just like a big fire, a circle of fire, and everyone's getting killed, all the elephants and the horses and the cavalry. Everyone but Jarasan is killed, the story. So Balaram is also, doing the same thing. They're working together. And Jarasan eventually goes back. He's going to take sannyas, and his advisors say, no, it was just an accident. The wind was blown in the wrong direction. Don't worry. Try again. So 17 times he goes. So eventually, the 18th, it's the 18th time or the 17th time. The 18th time, Kalyavana comes, with he's a lecha with millions of soldiers, and Jarasan is about to attack at the same time. And so Krishna says, oh, now we have a problem, because if we take care of Jarasan, then Kalyavana overwhelm Mathura and vice versa. So he runs from the battlefield. He runs. And he and Balaram run, and they run up a big mountain called Pavarshana. It's funny when Prabhupada says they're running, and then they, to take a little rest and relaxation, they run up the mountain. And then, so Jarasan thinks he's got him trapped, and he starts to fire all around, and the smoke is blowing, and they jump off the mountain, and they can't see him, and they go back to Mathura. And Jarasan says, oh, they're dead now for sure, and he goes back to his place. So anyway, they're together, and gradually, at that time, Krishna transferred all the residents of Mathura to Dwarka. He had that built, I think, was it Mayadanava? I think the architect. They built this whole city out, that could easily defend it. It's in the ocean, so how can you approach it, and there's a few gates, and so it's very secure. And so that's where he goes back to. They go back. They do the same thing. Kalyavana kills Muchukunda, or Muchukunda kills Kalyavana. Then he comes back, collects all of this booty. They take it all to Dwarka, and they settle in there. So after a lot of other things happen, I'm not going to tell the whole Krishna book. There's all of these, residents of Vrindavan. They're pining away. Now Krishna feels he can't go back because the residents of Dwarka will be so distraught. And there's all these other demons attacking Shalvan, and so he has to. But Balaram, he wants to visit Vrindavan. And so I'm going to read this chapter. It's pretty short, and it's so touching, his feeling and what they feel for him. Lord Balaram became very anxious to see his father and mother in Vrindavan. So his actual father is there in Dwarka, Vasudeva, but they grew up with Nanda and Yashoda. And so they've had all this fatherly, this filial. Filial means the feeling that children have for parents. The filial affection. Lord Balaram became very anxious to see his father and mother in Vrindavan. Therefore, with great enthusiasm, he started on a chariot for Vrindavan from Dwarka. The inhabitants of Vrindavan had been anxious to see Krishna and Balaram for a very long time. When Lord Balaram returned to Vrindavan, all the cowherd boys and the gopis had grown up. But still, on his arrival, they all embraced him, and Balaram embraced them in reciprocation. After this, he came before King Nanda and Yashoda and offered his respectful obeisances. In response, Mother Yashoda and Nanda offered their blessings unto him. They addressed him as Jagadishwar, or the Lord of the universe who maintains everyone. The reason for this was that Krishna and Balaram maintain all living entities, and yet Nanda and Yashoda were put into such difficulties on account of their absence. Feeling like this, they embraced Balaram, and seating him on their laps, began their perpetual crying, wetting Balaram with their tears. Lord Balaram then offered his respectful obeisances to the elder cowherd men and accepted the obeisances of the younger cowherd men. Thus, according to their different ages and relationships, Lord Balaram exchanged feelings of friendship with them. He shook hands with those who were equals in age and friendship, and with loud laughing embraced each one of them. After being received by the cowherd men and boys, the gopis, and King Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Balaram sat down, feeling satisfied, and they all surrounded him. First, Balaram inquired from them about their welfare, and then, since they had not seen him for such a long time, they began to ask him different questions. The inhabitants of Vrindavan had sacrificed everything for Krishna, simply being captivated by the lotus eyes of the Lord. Because of their great desire to love Krishna, they never desired anything like elevation to the heavenly planets or merging into the effulgence of Brahman to become one with the absolute truth. They were not even interested in enjoying a life of opulence, but were satisfied in living a simple life in the village as cowherds. They were always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and did not desire any personal benefits, and they were all so much in love with him that in his absence their voices faltered when they began to inquire from Balaramaji. First Nanda and Yashodamani inquired, "My dear Balaram, are our friends like Vasudeva and others in the family doing well? Now you and Krishna are grown-up married men with children. In the happiness of family life, do you sometimes remember your poor father and mother, Nanda and Yashoda? It's very good news that the most sinful King Kamsa has been killed by you, and that our friends like Vasudeva and the others who had been harassed have now been relieved. It's also very good news that you and Krishna defeated Jarasandha and Kaliyavana, who is now dead, and that you are now living in a fortified residence in Dwarka." When the gopis arrived, Lord Balaram glanced over them with loving eyes. Being overjoyed, the gopis who had so long been mortified on account of Krishna's and Balaram's absence began to ask about the welfare of the two brothers. They specifically asked Balaram whether Krishna was enjoying his life surrounded by the enlightened women of Dwarkapuri. Quote, "Does he sometimes remember his father Nanda and his mother Yashoda and other friends with whom he so intimately behaved while in Vrindavan? Does Krishna have any plans to come here to see his mother Yashoda, and does he remember us gopis who are now pitiably bereft of his company? Krishna may have forgotten us in the midst of the cultured ladies of Dwarka, but as far as we're concerned, we still remember him by collecting flowers and sewing them into garlands. When he doesn't come, however, we simply pass our time crying. If only he would come here and accept these garlands we've made. Dear Lord Balaram, descendant of the Shahar, you know that we would give up everything for Krishna's friendship. Even in great distress, one can't give up the connection of family members. But although it might be impossible for others, we gave up our fathers, mothers, sisters, and relatives. But then Krishna, without caring a pinch for our renunciation, all of a sudden renounced us and went away. He broke off our intimate relationship without serious consideration and left for a foreign country. But he was so clever and cunning that he manufactured very nice words. He said, 'My dear gopis, please do not worry. The service you've rendered me is impossible for me to repay.' After all, we're women, so how could we disbelieve him? Now we can understand that his sweet words were simply for cheating us." Now, before I go on, there's a book called Lalita Madhava, which is a play by Rupa Goswami, and deals with Krishna and Dwarka. But it's funny because there's so much Vrindavan Leela in there. And what reason is that just as these gopis are so bereft of Krishna, year after year, feeling pining away, experiencing the highest ecstasy of separation that Lord Chaitanya showed, Krishna is also pining for them. It's revealed in this Lalita Madhava, how he's always thinking of them, and at night he can't sleep, and he's pining. And so they built him a new Vrindavan, the original New Vrindavan. I don't know if you ever heard it. All kind of statues of Mother Yashoda and the cows and everything. And Krishna, in the ecstasy of madness, he's talking to them. And he's wondering why Yashoda doesn't answer him and all these different things. So he's also fit. Yeyatam abhadyante, tam tataiva bhajamyam, right in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is as much separation, feeling as much separation from them as they from him, which often doesn't come out, but it comes out in Lalita Madhava. Protesting Krishna's absence from Vrindavan, another gopi said, "My dear Balaramaji, we are of course village girls, so Krishna could cheat us in that way. But what about the women of Dwarka? Don't think they're as foolish as we are. We village women might be misled by Krishna, but the women in the city of Dwarka are very clever and intelligent. Therefore I would be surprised if such city women could be misled by Krishna and could believe his words." So the gopis go on talking like this. And then it describes here Balaram's response. Lord Balaram, of course, could understand the ecstatic feelings of the gopis, and therefore he wanted to pacify them. He was expert in presenting an appeal, and thus treating the gopis very respectfully, he began to narrate the stories of Krishna so tactfully that the gopis became satisfied. To keep the gopis in Vrindavan satisfied, Balaram stayed there continuously for 2 months, namely the months of Chaitra and Vaishakha, which correspond to March, April, and April-May. For those 2 months, he kept himself among the gopis, and he passed every night with them in the forest of Vrindavan to satisfy their desire for conjugal love. Thus Balaram also enjoyed the rasa dance with the gopis during those 2 months. Since the season was springtime, the breeze on the bank of the Yamuna was blowing very mildly, carrying the aroma of different flowers, especially the Kaumudi lotus. Moonlight filled the sky and spread everywhere, and thus the banks of the Yamuna appeared very bright and pleasing, and Lord Balaram enjoyed the company of the gopis there. The demigod known as Varuna sent his daughter Varuni in the form of liquid honey oozing from the hollows of the trees. Because of this honey, the whole forest became aromatic, and the sweet aroma of the liquid honey, Varuni, captivated Balaramaji. Balaramaji and all the gopis became very much attracted by the taste of the Varuni beverage, and all of them drank it together. While drinking this natural beverage, all the gopis chanted the glories of Balaram, and Balaram felt very happy, as if he had become intoxicated by drinking that Varuni beverage. His eyes rolled in a pleasing attitude. He was decorated with long garlands of forest flowers, and the whole situation appeared to be a great function of happiness because of this transcendental bliss. Balaram smiled beautifully, and the drops of perspiration decorating his face appeared like soothing morning dew. While Balaram was in that happy mood, he desired to enjoy the company of the gopis in the water of the Yamuna. And you know what happens next. The Yamuna doesn't come. Therefore he called the Yamuna to come nearby, but the Yamuna neglected the order of Balaramaji, considering him intoxicated. Balaram became very much displeased at the Yamuna's neglecting his order. He immediately wanted to scratch the land near the river with his plowshare. Balaram has 2 weapons, a plow and a club, from which he takes service when they're required. This time he wanted to bring the Yamuna by force, and he took the help of his plow. He wanted to punish the Yamuna because she didn't come in obedience to his order. He addressed her. "You wretched river! You didn't care for my order? Now I shall teach you a lesson. You didn't come to me voluntarily? Now with the help of my plow I shall force you to come. I shall divide you into hundreds of scattered streams." When the Yamuna was threatened like this, she became greatly afraid of the power of Balaram and immediately came in person, falling at his lotus feet. And then she prays for forgiveness. And then they swim in the Yamuna, and it's all very ecstatic. So every night for 2 months, they had this rasa dance. The time passed so quickly that all those nights appeared to be only one night. In the presence of Balaram, all the gopis and other inhabitants of Vrindavan became as cheerful as they had been before in the presence of both brothers, Krishna and Balaram. And that's the end of the chapter. But now I have to read, if you'll forgive me, one of my favorite pastimes. This is in bookmark here. Okay. This is chapter 67, Dravida Gorilla Delivered. While Shukadeva Goswami continued to speak on the channel pastimes of the characters of Krishna, King Parikshit, upon hearing it, became more and more enthusiastic. And so Shukadeva Goswami next narrated the story of Dravida, the gorilla who was killed by Lord Balaram. This gorilla was a great friend of Bhaumasura, or Narakasura. That was a Red Krishna book. This is a demon that Krishna had killed fairly recently, who had been killed by Krishna in connection with his kidnapping 16,000 princesses from all over the world. Of course, they became 100 of Krishna's queens. Dravida was the minister of King Sugriva. Now, this is very interesting because Sugriva is definitely one of the good guys. He's a very close associate of Hanuman, and apparently Dravida was fighting on the side of the monkeys who were conquering Ravana. But by bad association, he went bad. And in Krishna Lila, he is a real ingrate. His brother Mainda was also a very powerful gorilla king. When Dravida Gorilla heard the story of his friend Bhaumasura as being killed by Lord Krishna, he planned to create mischief throughout the country in order to avenge the death of Bhaumasura. His first business was to set fires in villages, towns, and industrial and mining places, as well as in the residential quarters of the mercantile men, who were busy dairy farming and protecting cows. Sometimes he would uproot a big mountain and tear it to pieces. You can imagine how powerful he was. what do we have? The King Kong type, He's even more powerful. In this way, he created great disturbances all over the country, especially in the province of Katwa. The city of Dwarka was situated in this Katwa province, and because Lord Krishna used to live in this city, Dravida specifically made it his target of disturbance. Dravida was as powerful as 10,000 elephants. Sometimes he would go to the seashore, and with his powerful hands he would create so much disturbance in the sea that he would flood the neighboring cities and villages. He calls it tsunami. Often he would go to the hermitages of the great saintly persons and sages and cause a great disturbance by smashing their beautiful gardens and orchards. Not only did he create disturbances in that way, but sometimes he would pass urine and stool on their sacred sacrificial arenas. He would thus pollute the whole atmosphere. He also kidnapped both men and women, taking them away from their residential places to the caves of the mountains. After putting them within the caves, he would close the entrances with big boulders, just like the bringy insect does to smaller insects, which arrests and carries many flies and so forth. Thus, Dravida regularly defied the law and order of the country. Not only that, but he would sometimes pollute the female members of many aristocratic families by forcibly raping them. While creating such great disturbances all over the country, sometimes he heard very sweet musical sounds coming from Raivataka mountain. This is near Dwarka. And so he entered that mountainous region. There he saw Lord Balarama in the midst of many beautiful young girls, enjoying their company while singing and dancing. He became captivated by the beauty of Balarama's body, whose every feature was very beautiful, decorated as he was with a garland of lotus flowers. Similarly, all the young girls present, dressed and garlanded with flowers, exhibited such much beauty. Balaram seemed fully intoxicated from drinking the Varuni beverage, and his eyes appeared to be rolling in a drunken state. Lord Balaram appeared just like the king of the elephants in the midst of many she-elephants. Dravida Gorilla would climb up into the trees and jump from one branch to another. Sometimes he would jerk the branches, creating a particular type of sound, kila kila, so that Lord Balaram was greatly distracted from the pleasing atmosphere. Sometimes Dravida would come before the women and exhibit different types of caricatures, meaning that he would make faces. By nature, young women are apt to enjoy everything with laughter and joking, and when the gorilla came before them, they didn't take him seriously, but simply laughed at him. But the gorilla was so rude that even in the presence of Balaram, he began to show the lower part of his body to the women, and sometimes he would come forward to show his teeth while moving his eyebrows. He disrespected the women, even in the presence of Balaram. Balaram's name suggests not only that he is very powerful, but that he takes pleasure in exhibiting his extraordinary strength. So he took a stone and threw it at Dravida. But the gorilla artfully avoided being struck by the stone. To insult Balaram, the gorilla took away the earthen pot in which the Varuni was kept. Dravida, being thus intoxicated with his limited strength, began to tear off all the valuable clothes worn by Balaram and the accompanying young girls. He's obviously a fool. He was so puffed up, that he thought Balaram could not do anything to chastise him, and he continued to offend Balaramaji and his companions. When Balaram saw the disturbances created by the gorilla and heard that he had already performed other such mischievous activities all over the country, he became very angry and decided to kill him. Immediately he took his club in his hands. The gorilla could understand that now Balaram was going to attack him. To counterattack Balaram, he immediately uprooted a big oak tree, and with great force he came and struck Lord Balaram's head. He swung it at Balaram's head. But Lord Balaram immediately caught hold of the big tree and remained undisturbed, just like a great mountain. To retaliate, Balaram took his club, Sunanda, and hit the gorilla with it, severely injuring his head. Currents of blood flowed from the gorilla's head with great force, but the stream of blood simply enhanced his beauty, like a stream of liquid manganese coming out of a great mountain. The striking of Balaram's club didn't even slightly disturb him. On the contrary, he immediately uprooted another big oak tree, and after clipping off all the leaves, again struck Balaram's head with it. He's swinging. But Balaram, with the help of his club, tore the tree to pieces. Since the gorilla was very angry, he took another tree in his hand, struck and swung it at Balaram's body. Again, Balaram tore the tree to pieces, and the fighting continued. Each time the gorilla would bring out a big tree to strike Balaram, Balaram would tear the tree to pieces by the striking of his club, and the gorilla Dravida would clutch another tree from another direction. and Balaram would attack Balaram in the same way. As a result of this continuous fighting, the forest became treeless. When no more trees were available, Dravida took help from the hills and threw large pieces of stone, big boulders, like rainfall, upon the body of Balaram. Lord Balaram, in a great sporting mood, began to smash those big pieces of stone into mere pebbles. This is the origin of the baseball game. The gorilla, being bereft of all trees and stone slabs, now stood before Balaram and waved his strong fists. Then with great force he began to beat Lord Balaram's chest with his fists. This time Lord Balaram became most angry. Since the gorilla was striking him with his hands, Balaram would not strike him back with his own weapons, the club or the plow. Simply with his fists, he struck the collarbone of the gorilla. This blow proved fatal to Dravida, who immediately vomited blood and fell down dead upon the ground. When the gorilla fell, all the hills and forests appeared to totter. After this horrible incident, all the siddhas, great sages, and saintly persons from the upper planetary system showered flowers upon the person of Balaram and vibrated sounds glorifying his supremacy. All of them chanted, "All glories to Lord Balaram! Let us offer our respectful obeisance unto your lotus feet. By killing this great demon, Dravida, you have initiated an auspicious era for the world." All such jubilant sounds of victory were heard from outer space. After killing the great demon, Dravida, and being worshipped by showers of flowers and glorious sounds of victory, Balaram returned to his capital city, Dwarka. This ends Bhaktivedanta purport of the 67th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Dravida Gorilla. And that's all I prepared for this morning. Any other comments or questions? Corrections? Hare Krishna. Okay, so I know there's no breakfast today, but I think we'll adjourn. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.